Few disagree that CEOs are woefully overpaid. We're talking about dozens of millions of dollars every year that go into their pockets, while the ground floor employees make just a fraction of that. It's always been ridiculous, that level of discrepancy. And despite all this, CEOs like to claim when they have a bad year that they had to lay off a bunch of people because it was just not financially viable to keep them on board. Meanwhile, they don't take any responsibility. They don't take a pay cut. And that's kind of what's happening here with Activision Blizzard, who have not only, pissed off customers who are well aware of Bobby Kotick's greedy antics, but this is a CEO so greedy that even shareholders are pissed at the guy over his overcompensation. So here's an article from news outlet Games Industry, published on June 4th, 2020, whose headline reads, Activision Blizzard shareholders upset over CEO Bobby Kotick's compensation. Publisher defends Kotick's pay despite his apparent failure to meet performance targets. The body of the article states Activision Blizzard has come under fire from some of its own shareholders who argued that CEO Bobby Kotick gets paid too much. I don't think that's an argument, I think that's a fact. 2 proxy advisory service firms have recommended that Activision Blizzard shareholders vote against a proposal to remunerate Kotick in line with previous years. So Activision failed to meet performance targets, and yet Bobby Kotick wants to be paid as much as he did last year. The recommendation was supported by the CTW Investment Group, which works to hold directors accountable for irresponsible and unethical corporate behavior and excessive executive pay. The group works with union-sponsored pension funds, which represent a substantial portion of Activision Blizzard's shareholders. Wow, somebody actually policing a game company's corporate practices? We have seen time and again how game company self-policing does not pan out, because that's like the mafia policing itself. It's ridiculous to think that game companies will, out of the kindness of their hearts, do the right thing, whether we're talking about the way they publish games with shady monetization tactics, to the way they treat employees, to the way executives are overpaid while ground floor developers suffer the consequences of bad leadership. Moving on, in a filing to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, CTW Director Dieter Weisenegger urged Activision Blizzard shareholders to vote against the management say on pay proposal, scheduled for the publisher's general meeting on June 11th. And here we have a quote from the filing itself that states, despite repeated low approval votes from shareholders, Activision Blizzard maintained multiple overlapping opportunities for its CEO to earn outsized equity awards even when performance-related vesting thresholds have not been met. How ridiculous is it that game publishers hold developers accountable for the Metacritic score, saying that if you don't get an 85 or above or a 90 or above, you don't get a bonus and you get paid less. Meanwhile, CEOs, when they don't meet their performance targets, the CEO doesn't want to see any punishment. The CEO doesn't want to see any semblance of responsibility, even though they're already set for life. It's just completely hypocritical, the difference in standards. The article continues, the group noted that the pay proposal doesn't detail some performance targets Kotick must reach, while others are set below the previous year's goals and actual results. Despite that, Kotick's proposed compensation has not been reduced accordingly. According to the filing, Kotick has received, get this, nearly $100 million each year in combined stock options and equity since 2016, which has been consistently larger than the total pay of CEO peers at similar companies. Yup, even among the scummy game company CEOs who are woefully overpaid, even among them, Bobby Kotick stands a level above. Meanwhile, lower-level Activision Blizzard employees, according to Games Industry, typically earn less than 1/3 of 1% of Kotick's earnings, a fraction of a fraction. Games Industry then adds how Weisenegger writes that Kotick's current remuneration is of special concern given the uncertainty faced by Activision Blizzard staff following its decision to lay off 800 staff in early 2019 despite a record year. This is a story that I covered, and optics surrounding this issue were further worsened by the fact that Netflix poached Activision Blizzard CFO, and the executive who became the new CFO got a $15 million bonus, or $50 million worth of bonus. And this was while Activision Blizzard decided to lay off 800 staff. Instead of trying to use some of that money to salvage these jobs, Bobby Kotick decided that that money needs to go to the higher-ups. And this is during a good year after a record year. There's just a complete lack of care and empathy for these companies. The people working under them aren't people, they are tools to be used and tossed once they're no longer of use. And on top of giving the CFO a $15 million worth of bonus, CEO Bobby Kotick also took a giant paycheck that year. It was just such a disgusting display. The filing then adds, disclosure surrounding the strategic objectives portion is severely lacking and merely cites attracting, retaining, and motivating top talent, cultivating new business opportunities and expanding existing ones, delivering production and development milestones, and increasing productivity. We note that 3 of these objectives are clearly related to human capital management, and that Kotick's apparent failure to achieve more than half of the targeted performance strongly suggests that Activision Blizzard's skewed approach to human capital management, lavishing multi-million-dollar rewards on the CEO as employees face layoffs, needs to be addressed before it manifests in deeper operational problems. So basically, a portion of Bobby Kotick's money could be better used within the company, but instead, Bobby Kotick is just pocketing that money. There's just zero accountability on the part of this asshole. Now, Activision Blizzard did respond to all this in a statement provided to GameSpot, and basically what they do here to justify Bobby Kotick getting overpaid and that huge discrepancy between his payment and the ground floor employees is talk about how incredible Bobby Kotick's contributions have been to the company, and basically they proceed to blow smoke up his ass. So here's Activision Blizzard's statement. During Mr. Kotick's tenure, which is the longest of any CEO of a public technology company, Activision Blizzard's market capitalization has increased from less than $10 million to over $53 billion. In the last 5 years, Activision Blizzard's share price has outperformed the S&P 500 by more than 120%, and over the past 20 years under Mr. Kotick's leadership, Activision Blizzard's share price has outperformed the S&P 500 by over 11,000%. Over 90% of Mr. Kotick's proxy report compensation is performance-based, and he has delivered exceptional value for Activision Blizzard's stockholders. Our equity dilution rates remain among the lowest of our peer group. So this statement basically reads, Bobby Kotick has made the company a lot of money over the years. Therefore, he should be absolved of any responsibility when there is a bad year. Who cares about the lives of ground floor employees? Who cares about just ethical practices? Who cares about leadership taking accountability? Even though Bobby Kotick right now is one of the richest people in the world and does not have to make a single extra cent to live comfortably with the money he's already made, apparently he still needs to have more money, a ridiculous amount of money, shoved into his pockets. This guy is no true leader, because a true leader looks out for their own. If you want to know what a true leader looks like, look no further than Satoru Iwata. During his tenure as CEO, his payment, his salary was lower than most game companies' CEOs out there. And when the going got tough for Nintendo during like the Wii U era and such, and any time the company went through rough tidings, Satoru Iwata and the executives would take a pay cut to do their best to salvage as many jobs and make sure the people under them are taken care of. That's a true leader. Whereas what Bobby Kotick is doing here is just taking money that could go to the company in some way that could help salvage jobs or that could bolster operations, just taking that money and pocketing it. Even though financially speaking, this guy is in the upper echelon of richest people in the world. Even shareholders are now beginning to get concerned at the way the company clearly is favoring Bobby Kotick's compensation, even during a time when they did not meet performance targets. Yeah, everything stated here in this filing is on point, and they held nothing back, which I'm glad to see someone holding a company like Activision Blizzard responsible for the way money is flowing in the company. We'll have to wait and see how this all pans out, whether this filing ultimately goes anywhere, and whether Bobby Kotick's compensation is reduced, or whether the incomprehensibly rich CEO will end up getting away with it, which, let's face it, is a very real possibility. But yeah, these are generally my thoughts and opinions on this whole situation. What's your take on Bobby Kotick's compensation and what was stated here in the filings? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.